Good morning. Today is Friday, May 31st, 2024, and we'll continue with Tanya. This is the second book of Tanya. We are now in chapter 7 out of 12 chapters. It's a relatively small book. Yesterday we talked about the multi-dimension. If you remember my piece of paper I was using to show the single zero dimension, 1, 2, 3, 4 multi-dimensions, to understand how God looks in the world. Let's say I'm looking on the plane of the table and I see what's going on with the plane of the table, but the creatures, beings that live within a plane of the table that don't have ability to jump off the table don't recognize me. They don't have a physical ways. The physical world, there are laws of physics such that they don't register me. They only see it within a two-dimensional surface, two-dimensional plane. But it's a little bit not completely clear. Today I want to get another step to clarify it, because in this model I look at them and they are separate from me. So this is me and this is them. I don't have direct influence on them. But let's make an example. I made it before and earlier. This is recording number 92. But in earlier recordings it said, let's say if I'm looking on my hand, is hand me or hand is separate? Well, hand is part of me, but it's distinct from the head, from the shoulders, from legs, from organs, and so forth. So if, let's say, these beings, just to make this example, illustration, if beings exist like blood, and this is my hands, and vessels and bones and tissues, do they recognize me physically or not? So hand is part of me, and yet it's not. That's probably the best analogy I can explain, that God on one hand creates something, and on the other hand that creation is still part of me. He's the creation and he's creator, and he's the power to create. We talked about many times. Now Tanya in chapter 7 goes further to say, and that's a philosophical question which is sometimes it can be pushed too far. It becomes just, most people will say, this is just a lot of philosophy. How do I deal my day-to-day life? But actually it helps, because a mental process tries to understand clearly who you are, what your goals are, what your objectives, what your purpose in life, what God's purpose for the creation. So now the God, Tanya says, well, here's, remember our 10 sfirot, and the lowest one is sfira of Malchut. In each of the world, Atzilut, Biriya, Yetzirah, and Asiya, exist 10 sfirot. In each of the sfirot has some influence inside the other sfirot. So God energy, so to speak, from infinity of God, it just waves, propagates through the world until it goes to the lowest of the worlds. It's still spiritual. It's our world of Malchut and of Asiya. And in this world, the lowest sfira, not Hesed, Chochmah, Bina, but Malchut, right below Yesod, below the Zeir Anpin, the 6 of the lowest sfirot, this worldly spirituality, so to speak. Malchut actually is the one that takes care of the world. So that's our transition from the infinity, when God is one, and all these characteristics, sfirot, are indistinguishable from each other, to the point where our world becomes physical and actually exists, yet part of God. How do I understand it exists, but it's not separate from God? Well, Malchut, actually where this transition happens. It's almost in that level, the upper part of Malchut is still infinity, and then on this side, it's already the time and space come out and create it, and this physical universe comes out. Rabbi Miller says in his book, the whole purpose of Malchut is to make this world possible. The world possible. It says, so if we were to ask the question, from God's perspective, does the world exist? The answer would be, it depends. From the perspective of Hesed and Gevurah and the other attributes, the world is utterly insignificant and does not exist. But from the perspective of Malchut, the world certainly does exist. That's why Malchut is here in the first place, to make the world possible. You know, the things, it depends. Now it's interesting, political play. Remember that university professors in America were asked, about anti-Semitism, and they say it depends. It became like a joke word. It depends. Like how everything can depend. Don't we have a black and white rules? Well, Tanya struggles with the same thing sometimes. It depends. And as we shall see later in this chapter, this is a key difference between the Zohar term of upper and lower unification. Upper unification is dominated by the perspective of the attributes above Malchut, where the world's identity is totally voided by God. In lower unification, the perspective shifts towards Malchut itself, where the world exists, but is dependent on the divine energy of Malchut that sustains it. Where creation that are product of Malchut, and from the perspective of Malchut, the existence of the world is real. So can we ever achieve the perspective that nothing exists outside God? So like again, it's a lot of philosophical approach. And now, of course, as we continue going through Tanya, we have to, most people will start asking questions. Okay, tell me again, what's the objective? How much of this philosophy, like Aristotle and Plato and Socrates, to talk about, do I exist, I don't exist? Does Judaism ask similar questions? Well, I guess you'll find similarity in human inquisitiveness all over the world and all over the centuries, all over from the days of creation. People ask these questions: am I for real? So we'll continue with the chapter 7, and hopefully we'll see you tomorrow. In the meantime, have a great day and Shabbat Shalom.